Tasha. Okay, we'll call this meeting of the Mansfield School Building Committee to order. Thank you all for being here. Our first item of business this afternoon is the approval of the December 23, 2021 minutes. We have a motion to approve the minutes. Chris, thank you. And second, Kathy, any corrections? Yes, Chris.
I'm just wondering, we had an extensive conversation about the geothermal, and it wasn't reflected in the minutes. If it's not necessary, then I'm fine with that.
It does, well, it mentions it briefly in the architect's update.
Okay.
So if you want more detail added, we can.
No, as long as it's in there.
Okay.
It's a,
Yeah.
We'll discuss again today in case that helps, if we want to have more documented for this next meeting.
Okay. All right. Then we have a motion to approve in a second. All in favor, please give me a sign. And any objections or abstentions? Rich, will abstain? Okay. Hey, you got that, Tasha?
Yes, Kathy, I had you as absent on the 23rd as well, so you would be abstaining.
I don't mean to be a know-it-all, but I don't have to abstain. As long as I
Okay.
can look at the minutes and approve them, I am not required to abstain, if that's okay with everybody else.
Yes,
Okay,
that, I mean,
thank you.
that is acceptable.
If Robert
All
said
right,
it was
so-
okay, I'm okay.
Robert said that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Then we'll move on to our OPM update.
Yes, good evening, everybody. So tonight, there's a couple focal points. I'll just kind of briefly run through them and then we can kind of dive in. Generally want to talk about sequencing and schedule and sort of where we're at and where we're going over the next few weeks and for the remainder of the project. Obviously, as I mentioned before, we want to talk about the geothermal and give an update on that. But also just as a preamble, and Jeff, if you can confirm this, there's a request to have the mechanical engineer, mechanical electrical HVAC engineer come on. And I thought I saw an email saying he would be on at around 4:30. So if we get to geothermal, or if there's other questions that might pertain to them, they should be available. So at that time when they come on.
Yeah.
So just want to put that seed in everyone's mind in case they have something that might be a more technical question.
Yeah, so that's Craig Raza is intending to join us when he's finishing with another meeting.
Just to start off with, we usually talk about sort of schedule and progress on site. And in general, there are some other areas ongoing on site that are important, but not as critical. So we have some wall framing and sheathing going on. Some of the anchor bolts that we saw being dented in past meetings have been repaired. Lots of inspections for piping and soil compaction and that kind of thing going on, as well as a number of large concrete pours. So the concrete pour scheduled for tomorrow in the bulk of area B. It's a big honking area there. But really all eyes are focused on the roofing and the roof deck and the ancillary components that tied to that, small roof walls, parapet walls, attachments, that kind of thing, all driving towards getting the roofing on. As of right now, in area B, they're focused on trying to get some of those additional elements. The roof deck is down, but we're talking, the focus is on getting the parapet walls up and some of the other elements coordinated in advance of the actual roofing itself, insulation board, that kind of thing going down. In area A, the roof deck is ongoing. And in area C, we just got notice that the materials are pushed back again by 2 weeks. But Al, correct me if I'm wrong, that doesn't appear to be right on the critical path portion of it yet. Really,
I'm sorry, Adam, that's not an additional 2 weeks. That's just the time that we'd already.
An additional 2 weeks for the roof deck in C, not in the other A and B areas.
Right.
But
Okay.
C is the C roofing, and again, Al, correct me if I'm wrong, is not on the key critical path as of right now. The main focus is on B and A. Is that right, Al? Is Al on?
Al, you're muted, Al.
Yeah, the focus right now is on B and A. Those are the academic and admin wings. The gym is, we can actually open the building without the gym, but it is behind, and the decking was further delayed 2 weeks. So we're getting the decking for the gym the end of this month.
So to Al's point there, that kind of ties into the main part of what I wanted to talk about today. So you notice I did not provide the typical, very colorful 2-month outlook schedule that I usually provide. And that's because there's just the past week or two, it's been constantly sort of a changing as to what's happening, when, where, and why. And whatever I would have put down wouldn't have been accurate 2 hours after I had submitted it. So the point being, in discussions with Al, looking at the schedule, looking at the sequencing and the trades, there is a trend there's an impact to the schedule insofar as the roofing and the roof and all the subsequent activities from the roofing. Right now, the current targeted substantial completion date is still in the middle of August. However, based on conversations with Al and looking at the trades and particularly the weather and it being too cold to put down certain materials and that kind of thing, the notion is that the schedule looks like it might be impacted where portions of the building might not be ready in that middle of August, certain support areas of the building. Now, to that point, anything that would require an official change in schedule would have to have a change to the contract if there was something that was outside the contractor's condition. So for example, we knew about the metal roof deck delays that were due to nationwide procurement issues. Al's in the process of generating a change order to that effect to document that extension. Chris Kiefner, that was the delay that you, I think, were referring to earlier. But just as wanted to bring this before the committee tonight as we're looking outside, we're looking at the weather forecast, we're looking at sequencing, and it does look like there might be an impact to schedule. And right now, what Al's doing, I'm doing, Joe and Scott are doing from Colliers as well, is looking at those sequencing events and scheduling and identifying where there are opportunities to mitigate any of those impacts. So the schedule doesn't get pushed out further, and to provide an actual substantive impact date and impacts to the committee, as opposed to just, there's weather out there, things might look bad. So that's where we're at right now. Insofar as action items moving forward. Yeah, exactly, Chris Kiefner. For those who can't see, he's got a sort of a schedule going out in a bunch of varying lines that are all overlapping. So in terms of action items moving forward, what we're looking at, even from a granular level, is other opportunities for an individual trade to perform overtime work or what have you to bring the schedule forward in anticipation of some of the delays. So we're working with Al to try to identify those opportunities as they become apparent. And then additionally, just receiving a makeup schedule from Newfield insofar as if there has been some setbacks, how do we get back on track? And so that document is forthcoming as well. I kind of just regurgitated a bunch of data there, so I'll take a pause if anyone has questions.
Tony, go ahead.
Just a quick question. Have there been any difficulties with shortages of labor due to COVID?
The only impact we had was a very short period with the concrete foundations. We went from I think a 9-man crew down to a 3-man crew for about a week. That's the only impact that we've had with due to COVID that we know of.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And to reiterate something that Al and the team discussed earlier this week, Al, as of right now, you still do not see any material procurement issues besides the roof deck issues that we already discussed. as of right now, your trades are still receiving the supplies that they need in time. And, there's not missing roofing material, there's not missing metal studs, curtain wall, all those are in alignment, and there's no known delays on those as of right now due to COVID or what have you. Is that right?
Yeah, there's no serious delays. I mean, we are having delays, but they're like a week delay here, a week delay, they're not like they're 6 months away.
Typical construction items, not this factory shut down due to COVID items.
Correct. Yeah.
How much detail do you look at? I mean, Al, I'm wondering things like flooring materials, sort of more future things that we might want to anticipate, or are all the windows, for example, available, doors, whatever. I mean, are there things that are just kind of, anyway, just further out? What's it look like?
Actually, the further out we get, the better it looks. We actually got a load of door frames today. So those are going to be stored on site until we need them. Same thing with the doors. Once the doors are ready, we'll go ahead and receive them and store them right on site. We'll have to keep them, conditioned, but yeah, so we're always looking forward. We're always calling the contractor. Do you have the material? Is it ordered? When's it coming? Can you send us a letter from the manufacturer saying it's going to ship this date, that, so on and so forth, so we're always looking forward, trying to get control of the material that we're going to need ahead of time,
Great, thanks.
Yep.
So there are concerns in terms of the schedule. At what point will we know for sure what the impact of the schedule is? Is it once the shell of the building is complete? I mean, is that like a mark that we could, plan from there on out, or can we find out earlier?
Yeah, I don't even think it's that far out. I think once we get a roof on and we can get temporarily closed in on the other sides, we should be in good shape. The windows are going to be here in about 6 or 7 weeks, which is right on schedule because the windows can't go in until the siding flashings are done around the window. So yeah, right now the key is getting the roof on, and that's going to be the critical thing. We have about 3.5 weeks to get the roof on, at least in area B, so we can get going on interior MEP work. We can do framing in there, which isn't affected by water, but we can't pull any electrical wiring or hang any ductwork if we don't have a roof on. So that's the key thing right now, is getting us watertight from above.
And the cold weather is not helping.
We do have a cold water adhesive for our roof. The problem with the cold weather is it takes longer for the adhesive to dry. So if it normally takes an hour for the adhesive to dry, it now takes 3 to 4 hours. And the adhesive has to dry before you can actually match the two pieces of the membrane to the substrate. So that's the holdup there. So we're not getting the production that we would normally get if it was summer or even spring. And we have another snowstorm possibly coming on Monday, which that could set us back just a week right there. So once we get through the roof, that's a big hurdle that we need to get over.
Okay.
In terms of foresight, I would anticipate that, Al just referenced 3.5 weeks for the roof in area B. So in 2 weeks, we've got another committee meeting, in which case we'll have eaten up over 50% of that time. If we've got a decent chunk of the area B roof done, that will lend some clarity as to what the schedule looks like. If the roof hasn't been able to start because it's been snowing and 4 degrees outside, then that'll also be telling. So I think just for the purposes of identifying when the question mark goes away and we can start dealing with something tangible, we'll have a greater clarity just by math in 2 weeks, and then thereafter, that's when the real makeup work insofar as makeup scheduling and sequencing will take place. But if there are, in that intervening time period, even if it's a single Saturday or some what have you, where we can advance the schedule by a day and get a PCO, that's something that we would obviously put forward as, if it's the appropriate amount, appropriate timing, get it in front of the subcommittee to even if it's a day at a time, to try to nick into this so that way to mitigate any risks as much as we can.
Okay. Any questions on that topic? Wait, Mary?
Is that good? Oh. Is there a question or is it back to me?
Oh, Mary, oh, there she is.
Sorry. I pushed the wrong button. I was just curious to know, Kelly, this is probably a question for you. If the calendar has been approved, or Kathy, you would know. And what are we looking at for a first day of school? I'm assuming it's after Labor Day. but-
Calendar goes, yeah, the calendar goes to the board at next week's board meeting. And I am proposing a start date of the Tuesday after Labor Day.
Okay.
And I did that in collaboration with talking to all these guys on the screen.
Okay, then Adam, then next update, Roy?
Yes, so the other topic I wanted to talk about was an update to the geothermal. I'll kind of go over it in high level, and then once again, if there are some more technical questions, we can defer them to when Craig Raza comes on, if there are technical questions. But in the committee packets, I had included a couple of some basically just basic site plans of the geothermal areas to show some of the progress that's been made since the last committee meeting, insofar as re-inspections, rework, reapprovals, that kind of thing. I'll share my screen quickly if I can find it. So you should be able to seeing just a basic map with some yellow highlighting it on it right now.
Yeah, with you.
So there are 7 circuits for the geothermal wells that are comprised of 9 or 10 individual wells, each connected by piping, and then they all come to a point and then go to the building. The main concerns that were the sort of crux of the problems identified by the town building official were with regard to the grouting, and then inappropriate sizing of pipes and backfilling before seeing any testing done. Since we last met, there was some rework done by the contractor, and then we had a sort of a all hands meeting between the building official, Craig Raza from the MVP firm, the actual subcontractor, and Newfield to go over, what's the path moving forward to identify, make sure we're putting in what we're supposed to be putting in, build official getting what he needs in order to pass inspections, and making sure there was alignment, because obviously there was not alignment. So we had a pretty productive meeting last week where the sort of laid out the issues, and we have resolution on that moving forward, both insofar as the grouting is concerned, where there were some issues with mixing the grout and how did that work in cold weather effects versus warm weather, and placement and clearing out existing water or new water that got in there. So we're getting a fully grouted tube, as well as some of the pressure testing. So when it's installed in a warm environment, you can test with water as per code and there's no issues and you pass it. But when it's freezing outside, there are concerns about putting water into a system and then leaving it under high pressure, and then it might freeze and cause issues. So the building official and the subcontractor work through those and identify the path forward that everyone approved of, to get the work remediated and passed inspection. So as we are right now, there are 4 of the 7 circuits that passed inspection. Most recently, it was 2 days ago, the first 2 circuits were regrouted, and the building official came out and gave them a pass, in addition to 2 circuits that were previously reviewed and approved. And then we still have 3 of the 7 to be resolved, but those are ongoing, and as I said, the path forward seems clear, or is clear to all the parties involved. So again, that's sort of the high level update on, what was a pretty concerning lack of quality in the work. It's now been brought up to snuff. Is there any, like I said, sort of general questions? And if there's any technical, we can put them in front of Craig when he comes on.
We'll do Steve and then Ryan and then Chris.
Thank you. Yeah, so the ones that passed inspection, were each of the wells in those sections checked, inspected, or was it a substantive number?
No, it's they have to expose everything, and then the grout is checked to make sure it comes up to the top of each well. And then because it's a connected thing, you do a pressure test as part of the whole system. So you expose everything and then check it and then put it back.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ryan?
Adam, do I have it correct that it's circuits, I think was the word you used, circuit 6 and 7 that were the ones that were originally, like the first 2 that were done that were problematic? Is that?
I believe so. I'd have to double check. I think you're correct because they were in the process of backfilling those when the discussion came up. But essentially all of them needed to be back checked, and there were, circuits 1 and 2 had issues with grouting that we discussed at our meeting last week. And so that's why if you see on there was multiple dates here where they grouted it, it wasn't fine.
Okay.
And then they had to come back and do it and check it again.
Okay, yeah, I guess I thought I was interpreting this to say that where we originally had 2 problem areas, we now have 3, but maybe that's not how it's to be read, so.
No, for all intents and purposes, all of them were under scrutiny because they weren't exposed and not tested in the manner that was acceptable to the building official and to Craig Raza. So like I said, for all intents and purposes, they need to relook at and double check everything to make sure it was up to snuff.
Yeah, because Craig, according to his report, Craig had mentioned that trench 4 and 7 was backfilled, but installed without sand. So he wanted that to be opened up so he could see what's in there. So that's part of the report.
And Mike Ninto, our building and housing director, we didn't have a chance to, it was kind of a hurried conversation this morning. And so I definitely missed key details because I was on my way to another meeting, but I thought I understood him to say that part of this process involves soil or material sampling for conductivity analysis. And he
Yes.
mentioned that by contract, the geothermal contractor would pull those samples. And so, I mean, under the circumstances, given the issues we've had, I'll be the first to raise my hand and say, I guess if the contractor is the one doing that, this process hasn't really inspired a lot of confidence in me that, we can be sure that's done right or done objectively, I guess.
Yeah, so that topic did come up. The conductivity testing is for the grout in and of itself. So the grout doesn't set up like a hard concrete that's rigid in the pipe. My understanding from Craig is that it basically is perpetually sort of this thickish paste. And that's what the conductivity testing is, to make sure that you're getting the heat exchange. Insofar as how that testing is done, when we were on the call last week, and Craig, when he pops on, I'd speak to it more. It is typically pulled by the contractor and sent to the manufacturer for testing because they have the value that it's supposed to reach. Mike did bring up the question during the meeting as to, well, why is the contractor pulling this? And so what was discussed at the meeting is that the contractor would take the sampling with Mike and Ray from Newfield there as well, to make sure it's actual sampling and not just sampling from back at the house or back at the office as opposed to on the site. So that was part of that discussion.
Thanks, Adam.
Okay, Chris McNabo first and then Chris Kiefner.
I'm curious to know, how was the issue dealt with, the fact that there was no sand bed laid before the piping was put in? So were the pipes taken out and then the bed put in and all, the large rocks removed before that?
That's how it would have had to been done. Yeah, so you can't just put sand underneath it. So they would have had to you can usually lift the pipe up and put sand back beneath. Al, I don't know if you know exactly how they remediated that, but if the sand bedding was required, you would have to move the pipe. And in some instances, the pipe needed to be swapped out for a different size anyway.
Right.
So they had to take the pipe out.
Yeah, all the work was done in the trenches with the sand and so forth, and it was inspected, and then they backfilled with sand, and that was inspected as well.
Thank you.
Okay, then Chris Kiefner.
I feel like what you just said, that the contractor takes the sample, and then in a second layer of obfuscation, or who knows what's going on, it gets sent to the manufacturer to say, did we do a good job with this material or not? And then the whole thing gets buried. So is there any other way to get a second opinion on the testing? I mean, maybe this is so specialized still at this point in its development, but I feel like we've got another meaning of double blind here.
Yep. So I did have a separate side conversation with Craig about what other additional testing we could do. And he was going to look into it. I don't know if he has had a chance to do that or not. But from my understanding of the typical process of this is that this is the way that these are normally installed in terms of testing and the manufacturer verifying thermal conductivity. Craig has not had once a well has been installed, he's not had them fail, he said. And so having a third-party testing like you would for a concrete or a steel weld or something like that is not the norm. And he wasn't immediately aware of additional outside testing, but once he pops on, we can ask the question if he's found anything or if he's had a chance to look. Because I had the same thoughts as many of you had in terms of, is there a way to have our testing lab do some sort of testing to double verify?
Yeah, your answer, it feels like Richard's answer to the electrician's, change order. Now, that's the way it's done. We just charge whatever, $45 a label. And no more satisfying to me on that, because it's still, it's not about whether it's failing or not. Is it living up to the performance that is expected of the material when it's in the ideal?
Understood. And that's the book isn't closed in my mind. We need to see if there is additional testing that we can do from a third party to, whether it's our testing lab or somebody else, to pull these and make sure that they're living up to snuff.
Okay, any other questions on this? Hopefully Craig's other meeting doesn't go long and he'll be joining us soon, but okay, so it sounds like progress anyway, as best we can tell. Okay, do you have other items, Adam, for us?
Nothing on my end, no.
Okay, then that will bring us to the architect update.
I just have a couple of things. It looks like the FF&E package bids are due next week. Addendum 3 just went out today. I just wanted to note to everybody that Newfield is keeping track of the waste management on the site, which is good. Trying to save a lot of stuff from getting into the landfill. So we had requested that they were on top of that, and Ben sent me a tracking log, so it looks like they're on top of that, which is good. Other than that, I think we're caught up on submittals for the most part, but I hesitate saying completely caught up because I just noticed there's 6 more in my box. So we're just trying to stay on top of all those as fast as we can to make sure we're not slowing anybody down, but without the expense or the risk of jeopardizing the quality of things. We're trying to still catch as much as we can and make sure that everything's coordinated and things are moving as fast as we can get them done. So that's about it from an architectural standpoint.
Go ahead, Chris.
Jeff, I'm wondering, could you share that log with at least me? I don't know if other people are
Oh,
interested.
definitely.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Chris McNamara?
Jeff, I saw in the photos that were submitted that there were some issues with the way the fascia boards were installed. I mean, that level of detail is something that you guys are still
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
watching, and I mean, that looks pretty obvious, but I don't know. There's probably a lot of other things too that you don't pick up on just with a untrained eye. So I'm glad that you're doing that.
Yeah, definitely.
So Jeff, in that report, there were a few other pictures of other things, which it seemed like they're probably not really big things, but I don't know. Are these kind of tracking with what you'd expect for typical, in a construction project this size, just things like that happen, or is it?
Yeah, things happen, with the weather and coordination and the trades all out there in the same area. I mean, things do come up. I think the goal is to just make sure that Newfield, and they seem to be pretty good at keeping on top of the subs and making sure that they get things done right. But they are trying to meet the schedule as well. So I haven't seen anything that's really of major concern. I did get a little bit alarmed when I saw the geothermal stuff. So I've been working with Colliers and Craig to make sure that we get everything double checked and triple checked so that we don't have any issues later. And Newfield's aware of that as well, because the last thing anybody wants is to have to go back and redo something again. So yeah, we're trying to stay on top of everything as best we can, but nothing steel, there was minimal issues, if any issues, with the steel erection. The concrete seems pretty good other than the soils. The roofing, once we get that up and we get everything sealed up, then they can start rolling inside. I just can't wait for the glue lambs to be, fully protected by the roof and everything enclosed, because I don't want any staining on those. But it looks like they've done it. They've sealed the ends. They've covered everything up. So that's all good. They're pouring the slab down in the B and A wing tomorrow. So they're hustling. So that's good. Other than that, we just have to keep checking and double checking things.
Okay, any questions for Jeff? And then I see that Craig has joined us. We can talk with him. Any final questions for Jeff? Okay, Craig, thank you for joining us. I know you're busy, but we have questions on geothermal. We did talk about it a little bit, about some of the progress that's been made. Can you talk about the conductivity testing and how that's done, and the validity of the results, and kind of where we're at with that?
Well, we haven't seen any test results yet, because they haven't submitted anything for the spec the way they're supposed to be. The way the spec calls for, they're supposed to take tests of the grout at 3 different times: at the beginning, in the middle, or 1/3 in and 2/3 in, and they're supposed to get 3 independent samples tested. That way you kind of see that they're being consistent throughout the installation. They haven't done that. So they took 3 tests and they submitted them, but they have to now test as they kind of continue, as they go forward, just to make sure it's in compliance. So I believe they're going to be doing that now. We're looking for grout to be at 1.2, and that's what we specified. That's what we designed the wells at. I don't see any reason why they won't be, as long as they follow as they call the recipe, the mix requirements. We shouldn't have any issues, but we're going to wait the result of those tests.
And so do those tests tell you that will they tell you that it's been properly grouted from top to bottom?
No, all those tell us is that the grout mixture that they're using is appropriate. That's it. Grouting from top to bottom, they're supposed to grout from the bottom to top, not top to bottom.
I understand the direction of it.
Yeah. And they're supposed to fill it up, and they have to keep filling it up until it fills to the top. It will settle. If you get a fissure or in the well column, you can have grout ooze out, and that's why grout will drop. But eventually you'll catch up to it. The well will eventually fill, and it has to be grouted to the top of the well. And just the grout will maintain a pudding type consistency for lack of better terms. It doesn't get rock hard. So it's always a soft, mushy type consistency.
So that 1.2 number that you cited, for those of us who don't know anything about grout, is that the thermal conductivity of the grout
Yes.
itself, or does it tell us anything about the performance of an entire well?
Now, the 1.2 is what is the thermal conductivity we're looking for to get the heat transfer that we need in performance of the well.
Okay.
That's what we use our design. When we tested the well, that's what they used. And that's what we put into the program to make sure the well field has the capacity for to serve the building.
And when their testing is done, will we be able to tell that the entire well field is meeting specifications?
No, all we're going to know is that the grout samples that they submitted are to spec.
Greg, did you find one of the things we talked about offline after the meeting with Mike last week was we talked about this notion of having the well testing, basically the well testing its performance before you hook it up to the building. And my takeaway from that was that you didn't know of any at the time because usually that's not industry standard practice how that's done, and there's not been typical failures. Did you find anything about some sort of testing regime that could be undertaken if that?
No, I haven't to that scale. When we do test wells, you're testing a well at a time with a small machine that's going to, can inject 3 tons worth of capacity into a well, and they'll plot that curve like we had done in the 2 wells up here. I don't know of one that's going to test a 66 well field with that kind of capacity to see how long it's going to last. Plus, from a test perspective, it would be a point in time. Wells will can work great out of the gate. It's longevity you're concerned about. Typically, once you have your data, your wells and the bores are tested from a fact that they don't leak, the pipe loops are connected and they don't leak, they're piped to the right size. If all that is done correctly, there shouldn't be any issues with the building or the loops failing at that particular time.
Okay, questions for Craig from other people in the committee? Chris?
Yeah, Craig, I'm curious about, there were, I think, 3 wells that had cracked casings. Is that approximately right?
2 or 3, I believe.
Okay.
Correct.
And and as I understand it, those then are abandoned?
They were going to drill 3 new wells. They sent me a sketch to reposition 3 of the circuits to abandon wells.
Is there, what is the reason for not using the ones with cracks? I mean, how big are these cracks? How bad does it diminish the effectiveness? I would think it would be simply a bonus if you had another well circuit, a single well circuit, even if it wasn't performing at 100% or at expectation.
Chris, I don't have an answer to that because this is the first job we've ever come across. We've had a well actually fail.
You mean a casing?
A casing actually fail where the well was not usable. I'm not sure. I don't know the reason or the benefit or the detriment to trying to retain or use that well.
Okay.
I could think of if they had a failure during the casing, you're not in the bedrock, so you can have soils that can go. You can have stuff leach out, and it may not hold your grout. It could be a problem. That's what I could think, but I don't know if that's true or not.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know. I wasn't having a good connection when Adam was talking, but I was curious about this, the inspection, and that the norm is simply to send it back to the manufacturer. And my comment was that all the stuff gets buried anyway, and the contractor says, "Hey, looks good to me." Do you have any concerns on that end? Given, and again, partially given the way this has progressed, I'm feeling like we're getting another unknown when we send it off to, their side rather than to their people rather than our people.
Well, it goes back to the grout manufacturer. That's who does the independent test, and they don't have any reason not to perform the test appropriately. It comes down to the sample. You know, if somebody witnesses them taking the samples at the periodic time, someone from NEPA, someone from the town, at least you have an idea that the samples are out. As a matter of fact, we can have somebody else send the samples out to the grouting company to do their tests. You have to have some faith in the contractor, but I can understand your concerns as what we've been seeing with this guy to date. I have another project going right now, and everything, the guys that did the test well, everything's been going great on that particular project. Samples were done right, everything followed my spec to the T. This guy just doesn't do it. It's probably why he got the job.
And that relates to my last question on this, which is, are these people seeming to have any kind of greater posture of responsibility?
Well, from the last phone call, it seems like they are taking full responsibility for the well field if it doesn't work. Based on the test conditions, based on what they installed, they're digging up the stuff that wasn't done properly. So they're rectifying what they've done to date. Even to get the final testing that's required by code, they're going to do it after the air test is done. When they get the vault all connected, they can bury the lines and keep it from freezing. So they seem to be following through, but it's not until after they're brought to the table on things that they aren't doing proper.
So that's why I'm asking, this idea of are they taking responsibility for it now? In other words, even we're going to get this right from here on out, or it's just like, oh boy, okay, we'll fix that. All right. And what's their attitude? What's their posture?
I mean, I'll speak for Adam. He was on the call too. Sounds to me like they're doing what they need to get the job done. I can't say I have full confidence that if they're not being watched all the time, they may not try to pull some fast ones, but if they sounds like they're putting the pipe in the way it's supposed to be done. They got the bedding in the way it's supposed to be done. The pipes are tested and not breaking. Really nothing else should go wrong. As long as the wells are brought up to where they're supposed to be. And I think Mike has done a great job getting educated as well as putting these guys to task to make sure, because he's there more than we are. We're only there every 2 weeks taking a look, and a lot happens in those 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Chris McNamara?
I'm not sure if this is really for Craig or for Al, but I mean, I'm kind of in the same camp with Chris about what is their level of sincerity about trying to get it right and the amount of eyes we can have on them for the rest of their portion of the job.
Well, I know on our end, we're keeping a very close eye on them. In fact, I talked to Kyle, who was our project manager from the well company, on the way home tonight. And he's not happy with the way things are going. But he understands that it needs to be done the way that it's written in the spec. You know, he brought up a job he's doing in South Windsor, blah, 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 and he's done it in half the time. And but the guys seem to be following our direction well since we had the confrontation with him.
Yeah, remember, the spec is really not it is a guideline, but it has specific things that they need to follow. Correct. And they basically have not been staying to the letter of the spec. They've been brought out on the carpet. Now they're rectifying those issues, but as long as they continue to move along the direction they're going, I think we'll be fine. And I did get a call from Ben today about the vault. I did follow up with the manufacturer. I got the information. I'll be sending out an email as far as the tie downs, anti-flotation. I'll get that addressed tomorrow.
Okay, Steve?
Sorry, Craig, did I understand you correctly that when each well is being grouted, each well should have 3 samples taken of the grout?
No, you take 3 samples for the entire project. At the beginning of the project, when you start grouting, 1/3 of the way in and 2/3 of the way in. So you're sending out samples at 3 different times.
Okay.
Just to be consistent. Now, you don't check every one, because when you make the mix is pretty much consistent. As long as you're putting the right amount of sand in with the bags, it's consistent through. You don't get very much deviation. Where can it be? Yeah, if a guy takes a little bigger shovel, because they're just shoveling it in, right? You take a bigger heap shovel than another, it could vary a little bit, but it's not going to vary that much over the grouting exercise.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, anything else for Craig?
I do have one other
Yeah, go ahead,
quasi
please.
technical. Craig, you said it's 1.2 is the heat transfer rate. That's doesn't mean a whole lot. Can you give me another material that you might be familiar with and what the heat transfer is on it? Like aluminum or like, I don't know what, PVC?
Off the top of my head, I don't have any. The thermal conductivity is a little bit different for this. I don't have one off the top of my head for another material.
Okay, well, let's start with, then is it worse if it's higher or better if it's higher? Which way?
Better if it's higher. Better if it's higher than lower. Yeah. It has to be, we want 1.2 or better.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else for Craig?
Randy, can I ask Craig excuse me, a quick question? So Craig, with the level of installation now, and, we talked about, potentially somebody needing to be there more, you're only there once every 2 weeks. What still is being done, or what still would you potentially recommend if the committee wanted to consider additional oversight? What might that be?
Oh, if they want more frequent visits, we can. We just, we put the proposal together. We only had 20 something or 30 something visits allocated for, which is basically every 2 weeks during construction. So more can be had if necessary, or we can do some more, less later.
And that could certainly be done on an hourly basis.
Sure,
so I guess
sure.
The question is, at this point, we do have a concern, and it sounds like you feel that potentially your eyes or staff from your eyes, staff from your firm would be, beneficial maybe to provide a heightened level of oversight. Understood, yeah, you didn't anticipate being there full time, or at least all of the time when the driller was on site. So I guess question, Randy, for you and the committee, if there still is enough meaningful work to remain, does it make sense to get a proposal from Craig through the architect's office, potentially on an hourly basis, to try and see, if they had available staff, to get available staff out there to give the committee a better sense of oversight and that everything is being done as their specification indicates?
So Craig, are there activities going on out there that having a weekly inspection or even more frequently would could be beneficial?
There's a lot now because you guys they're really moving. They're pouring, so all the underground is done. They're pouring slabs. We got a chance to see it before slabs, which is good. But as soon as he gets his building enclosed, you're going to have a lot of activity going on a daily basis with utilities, ductwork, piping, conduit, everything starting to be roughed in. So you're going to see a lot of action happening very fast over the next couple months once the roof's on.
Well, Craig, I wasn't specifically talking about the entire building oversight, but specifically in this case, just on the geothermal wells, grouting, finishing, testing, and inspections. So I think that's really the concern of the committee at this point. And is there any meaningful work still remaining where a heightened level of oversight potentially from your company would benefit?
So what's left on the wells right now is 3 and 5 are backfilled. 1 and 2, they haven't backfilled 1 and 2 yet, Al?
1 and 2 are backfilled, yep.
Oh, 1 and 2, so we got 4 backfilled. So we got 2 and 4 and 7, which have to be dug up so we can confirm that those are right. And then 6 has to be completely done from scratch. So that's what's left to do before we tie in at the wall. So the next schedule was 6 was next, or 4 and 7? I forget.
They're working on 7 right now.
Okay, so they're digging up 7, so we can come up once 7 is dug up. We can take a look at 7 and see the condition of it. That would make sense. And then once they dig up 4, we could take a look at 4, and then once they dig up 6, we take a look at 6. So it's 3 additional visits before they backfill. Or however, we can use the visits that we have, and just continue to go and count them as a site visit while we're there. And then if we run out of site visits, we can charge it at that particular time. You can do this any way you want. You have a number to use. So if you want more frequent now, we just use those until we run out, and then we can talk about it later.
Chris?
Would it make sense for, you've expressed, I forget who did, but some confidence in Mike Ninto's knowledge now about it. Would it make sense to leave it to Mike to do this, what he did before, which was get in touch with people if he sees something off? We've also got Adam out there, and Al, if not Ray, and so forth.
So I don't know, what do you think, Craig? Does it need to
Mike
be someone
is,
from your firm?
Mike is doing the inspection.
Down the
so-
schedule. I mean, if you have number 7 open right now, I don't know how long it takes them. You know, this probably be pretty quick once they get it open to get to clean out the top of the well, make sure the grout is good. That's going to be a fairly quick operation. I know we're planning on being there next Friday. We'll be there on site. If it needs to be done before then, we can come up and do that. If it's a couple little trips, if I'm in the area, it's easy.
Yeah.
But it may not be much at this point in time now, and we can kind of work it out, I guess, as it goes through at this point. But I think 6 definitely Mike can take care of because he knows what he's looking at. 4 and 7, maybe we want to take an eye on since it's already been buried and who knows what's going to be. Especially the piping. I'm concerned they didn't put the piping in right.
Yep.
So once 7 is completely uncovered, Al, give us a call and we'll schedule it up, make sure it's right before you backfill will come up.
Yep, will do.
Okay.
Okay, Chris McNamara, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I would certainly be in favor of Craig's eyes on the project. It's really 3 out of 4 trenches that he has a chance to look at, and it's not quite half, but it's significant enough that can really impact the operation of the system. And I think the more people out there, the better. If Mike can continue to go, that's good, but I think there's a certain amount of pressure that Craig and his folks can put and expertise that would make sense right now. And I like the way you frame that, Craig, with, we have a certain number of visits, so we don't have to vote on any more or less right now. We can see what we need later on, because I agree, we don't want to take away from the rest of the project, but I don't want to hold anything else up right now.
Yeah, and Chris, just to be clear, we've looked at 3 and 5 when we first went up there and come up with the conditions. We didn't see after it's corrected, but we were there when 1 and 2 were open last week. So we got to see 1 and 2. I wasn't there, but Brian was there from my office. So we got to see 1 and 2 before they were backfilled. So now it's really not much that we haven't got our hands on. The other 3 we'll get to see. So we'll basically see almost everything too.
We'll call you, Craig, on the final 3. We'll give you a call and let you know that we're.
Yeah, I mean, if it'd be great if you had something ready Tuesday, but give me a shout Monday to confirm. I'm going to be half hour away on Tuesday. So that makes things a little easier sometimes. If it doesn't work out that way, I know Brian will be there Friday, but it may not work out. So we'll see. Just keep me posted, Al. Okay?
We'll keep you posted. Yep.
Yep.
I just texted Ray.
Okay.
Okay. Any final questions for Craig? Okay, seeing none. Well, thank you for joining us today, Craig.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, bye. Okay, then we concluded the architect update. Is that right, Jeff? That's right. Okay, so then a contractor update.
Okay, I'm just going to share the screen here. Okay, so I've got some aerial photos of the building here. This is area B down here, which is the lower level and upper level. Area A, all the roof decking is on now. The steel is being set in the gym area. And the steel is expected to be complete, before the Roof decking gets here in 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, whenever it's coming. So it's coming along pretty good. If you can see the drywall contractor is doing all the clear story framing and sheathing. And he'll move on to this building shortly. It's framed, it's got to be sheathed. And you'll see more of that around the building. So we're trying to get the building closed in to capture the heat. This is a section of the gym that's under construction now. You can see the walls a little better here, and they've started sheathing the lower level. Another view. Pretty much the same. You can see here where they're sheathing. They're sheathing the lower level and getting the upper level framed in. They actually started sheathing the upper level today. And you can see that here. So we hope in a week and a half, we can get these two wings completely closed in on the side walls and the clear story walls. We do have heat going on in both basement areas in these two wings.
Ray, I mean, Al, when did you take these pictures?
These were taken today, this morning. This is a shot of the geothermal field. And this is 7 right now. This is what they're working on now. Row 7. This is a new geothermal vault that just came yesterday, right here. This connects all the pipe from the geothermal, and then there's 2 pipes that leave this vault and goes to the building.
Is that vault is large enough to walk in? And
it's like fully contained. There's outlets and inlet pipes coming in and out of it. But yeah, it's pretty big. They had a crane to unload it. This is the we got this section of slab poured. This is the slab on deck in the B wing. We had already poured the south side. We were able to get the north side in. We got a couple of days of decent weather. These are just insulating blankets on top. We have heat below as well. And then this is the basement area of B South, which will be poured tomorrow. So we should have this. This has to set for about a week, and then we'll get on the slab. We'll start laying out some walls. Just laying out walls for now. We're going to give the mechanical electrical contractors some time to get in here while it's open. Get a lot of their hangers in. Locate their equipment, so on and so forth. That gives the framers and drywallers time to get the exterior walls complete. And once they're done with this area B, it's closed in, then they'll come in here and start doing some interior walls. I believe that is it for photos. So it's going fairly well. We're just trying to deal with the weather. The weather is the biggest thing right now, but once we can get a roof on, we kind of take the weather out of the equation. So things will start moving once we get a roof on.
Okay, questions for Al?
Just a request.
Okay, Kelly, and then Chris McNamara.
Al, would you mind forwarding those photos?
Oh, sure. No, yeah.
Thank you.
Chris?
I don't want to jump ahead, but it's Al's thing about the change order and the sheathing behind the e-pay. I don't understand why we wouldn't need that. I'm just not understanding that part.
That might be a question for Jeff as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's 2 systems that we're using for our envelope. One is an ePay lap joint system, which is a tight joint. We have a 1/4 inch sort of reveal, but it's not an open joint. There are two air barriers, one that is porous and one that's not. The one that's not is a bath. I think of this as a bathtub, like right over the sheathing, before the wood goes up, before the Z-girths, before the insulation. That is the one that is defending the interior space from anything that potentially could get through the wall. Or not through the wall, through the skin, because nothing's going to penetrate the wall. Now, with an open joint back ventilated rain screen system, when the joints are open 3/8 of an inch, sometimes what they do is they put a very porous air barrier, so that for two reasons. One is that it's breathable. It's like a Tyvek on the house. And it's also a darker color we use so that we don't see the hat channels or anything else that we don't want to see through the open joint. This is a closed system. I vetted this with our net zero consultants, with our dew point experts, everybody, even Craig Raza with Kohler Ronan you just heard from. And they said that we can go either way with it. I saw it as an opportunity to not have to deal with that and get a credit. We still have that product, and we have to have that product at the zinc metal panel system, where we have a nail-based insulation. We have a plywood. We got to protect the plywood. But in this case, that Ipe is zero maintenance. It can get wet. It's just so dense, and it's a closed joint system that we don't need it.
Thank
So I
you.
saw it as an opportunity to get a credit. So it's about time we start getting more credits on this job.
Good job, Jeff.
Okay, any other questions for Al? Okay, then thank you very much, Al, for that report. And then that brings us to our PCO review. We have one PCO today, and it is, as you heard, a credit. I don't know, Adam, do you have anything else to add?
No, that was the bulk of the discussion on that point.
Okay. So,
I was going to move we approve it, but I don't have the.
okay, I'll propose a motion here, and you can tell me you
Thank
can
you.
make this motion.
Thank you.
A motion to approve PCO 047 dated 12/27/2021 for a credit in the amount of $2,631.28 for the elimination of weather barrier behind the exterior wood siding. So that's Chris's motion. Is there a second? Rich, thank you. Any final questions? Then all in favor of approving this PCO 047, give me a sign. Any opposed or abstentions? Okay. Then I believe that brings us to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Mary. Is there a second? Madison, thank you. And then all in favor, you can say goodbye, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Randy.
Bye, everyone.